Welcome to Black Businesses Matter, a podcast about why Black businesses matter and the benefits of collaborating and advocating for Black businesses to drive impact. Each episode will cover legacy, hope, Black joy, funding sources, cultural shifts, equality, and so much more. We will provide inspiration and action while spreading some joy to a thriving community of Black business owners and leading thought leaders.
I am Larvetta Lofton, your host and the founder of the L3 Agency.
Known as the brand maven who transforms organizations with her storytelling prowess, meet Larvetta L. Lofton, host of Black Businesses Matter, a podcast about why Black businesses matter and the benefits of collaborating and advocating for Black businesses to drive impact.
Welcome back to another episode of Black Businesses Matter. You know, guys, we've been talking about trauma and, I thought it was going to be a doom and gloom kind of season, but it actually has been nothing like that. It has been very vibrant, very vulnerable. And I like that. And I appreciate that because I think that we need that in this world that we are living in today. And trauma is not a bad thing. I think out of this entire season, I've learned that, trauma is not bad. It's how we go out in the world and behave with our trauma. And so we have to watch that, which is why we've had therapists to share those things with us. We've had different people share their own trauma and how they've been able to master their business and master their lives. So, don't let trauma be the crutch. But I will say this, when it comes to Black business, we are resilient. So we know how to do that very well. But where it shows up is in the numbers. And this lady that we are about to bring up is going to share that with you. And it really does. I've heard it. I've heard people say, yep, you out. But then when them numbers come out, the numbers tell all. And I know she nodding like, yep, they sure do. And so we are going to really dive into that. And I am experiencing that in my life finally, that there is alignment in my trauma and in my finance. It's now aligned, but before it wasn't together. And that's because I needed to do some work on some things and I had some limiting beliefs and all these things. So, okay, business owners, entrepreneurs, this young lady is someone that you really, and I've been telling you all, lean in on this particular season because it's the season that I think can build your business to profit, right? Hence, we've got someone who has a whole book on this. And so really setting you up for it. Okay, guys? So trust me when I tell you, you've been riding with me. This is season 10. We've been on this journey together for 3.5 years. And so I am truly, truly grateful that I get to meet all these amazing people who all have a zone of genius. And I'm grateful for our next guest. Susanne Mariga is I love how that's, I just like it. I just like the way it just rolls off my tongue. Is a CPA and fractional CFO specializing in high net worth strategies to a 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs. I love that she had 8 figures because, we were running with 7 figures. Now we're running with 8 figure entrepreneurs using the Profit First system. She is the CEO of the Mariga Group, a Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business firm, and was named the 2021 Profit First Professional Firm of the Year. Congratulations, Susanne. That's awesome. Susanne is the author of Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises, host of the Profit Talk podcast, and has been featured in Houston Business Journal, MBE Magazine, and other media. She helps entrepreneurs maximize revenue, implement sound tax strategies, and scale sustainably. Woo! Welcome to the show, Susanne. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you because the word that you use that I absolutely adore, because I say this a lot, is we can come up with all the business, but is it sustainable? And you said scale sustainably, right? We've learned the word scale, but scale sustainably, We haven't. And so I'm excited to have you here. Before we jump into like you being the Goldman Sachs 2021, like before we go there, who was Susanne as a little girl?
Oh, wow. Susanne Mariga as a little girl was probably a nerd.
Oh,
A big nerd.
a big nerd, but you a cute nerd too. Forget that. Don't forget that.
Well, thank you.
Don't forget that.
Thank you. I don't know quite back then, I look at those pictures of that hair sticking up in the air and I was like, oh, her mama did not do her hair that day and it was picture day. Can they do a redo of third grade, fourth grade? But yeah, I was a nerd. I think I'm still a nerd, but now I get paid for being a nerd. So it's good.
Ooh, Susanne, I like the way you said that. Now I get paid to be a nerd. So nerds, if you're a nerd, know that you can get paid to be a nerd because Susanne is that. So I love that you say that. I love that. So tell me this, as a nerd, as a child, what was your favorite subject?
So I love like science. I love math. I read a lot of books. So I don't know if I had a favorite subject. I just liked learning.
Yeah.
So and I love like logic and how
Okay.
things kind of all come together. So
Okay.
real nerd, big
Real
nerd.
nerd. Okay. Real nerds. But I love that. I mean, you didn't have a favorite subject. And I think that's the one thing that I love is that because sometimes, right, having the favorite subject, there's an expectation that you'll become that, right? Like if you love science, I love science too. And so I love when someone else loves science and I'm in marketing, but it's something about science, the scientific way. It was cool for me to just learn. I don't know, but I'm not a scientist, right? And you're not a scientist, but
Well,
there's science.
you are, right?
We are, Susanne. We are science. You're right. We are
You
scientists.
definitely are.
You're right. I think we've
In order to calculate that return on investment for advertising, you have to
That's
be.
true. That's true. Okay. All right, Susanne. Thank you for that. I needed that to let me know I'm a scientist. I like that. That's another comma that we get to have. So tell me entrepreneurship. So where did you learn entrepreneurship? Where did it come from? Were you raised in a family of entrepreneurs? Because I do believe that sometimes people who live in those families, we tend to birth that, and some that don't. Sometimes trauma puts us there. So I'd love to hear how you grew into entrepreneurship.
So it's interesting because I was lucky in that my dad had a CPA firm when I was growing up. So,
Wow.
when I was about 14, I had aged out of, being able to really go into daycare systems or anything like that. So he said, what, I'm going to hire you and you're going to be my bookkeeper. You're going to come to work with me and you're going to answer the phone and you're going to do people's books. You're going to learn some simple tax things and sales tax returns, payroll tax returns, and you're going to be my bookkeeper. And I remember like the phone rang. My dad is Chinese, my mother is Black.
Okay.
And I'd be like, Mr. Chan's office, Suzanne speaking, how may I help you? Calling my dad, Mr. Chan. And it was interesting because although it was a tax write-off for him, it really was a way of passing down knowledge and really almost like an apprentice program for us.
Yeah.
And although I said I would never, ever become an accountant, look at me now.
Look at me now. I believe that we always say, I don't want to be nothing at our parents. And then we look up and we're like, wait. I'm actually doing what they were doing. So I love it. But you're doing it your way, right? Obviously not dad's way, but dad gave you the knowledge, right? So also
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So you so why so let me ask you this. Did you go to college? I'm just asking because I'm like, you
I
did.
did. I went to the Ohio State University.
Oh, here we go. These the people in that and so literally my son, he's back here like, oh my gosh, because he's Michigan. Y'all know how that them Big Ten schools. I'm gonna let y'all have y'all moment. And the Ohio State University grad is on today. Let me just stay there. So I need to make sure because there's a lot of rivalry, man. I try to stay away from that because it's a lot of smoke. And did you?
I was in Michigan 2 weeks ago, and it's a fabulous state, Detroit, a fabulous city. No hate from there, right? They still put out great grads, so no hate.
I love it. I know, right? And hence, I got on Detroit is the New Black, which I'm not from Detroit. I'm from Chicago. But I went to Detroit to do a lot of stuff in Detroit years ago. And this was a Black brand. They had like a pop-up experience. And so you could walk in and buy from, all these different Black brands. It was really cool. It was downtown. And I just, so everyone always loves it. I just love it. It's like a nice, how fall, you want a good, I told you my story, a good hoodie. And this is one of my good hoodies that I've had for quite some time. So, but nevertheless, we still love you because you are an Ohio State grad. So we still love you. So based on that, right? So give me your journey to entrepreneurship.
So it was interesting. So, when I went to Ohio State, I actually didn't plan to be a accountant by any means. I was actually going to be pre-med. And so when we talk
Pre-med?
about
Did you say
science, you
pre-med?
really like science.
Wow.
I did a lot of science. I did a lot of math until they stopped running out of numbers and you were just adding up alphabet to solve for things.
Okay.
And it was interesting because my third year, I realized probability of getting in medical school. Do I really like what I'm doing and what I'm going to go? Because, this is a child that focused on books, never volunteered in a hospital, help people more on a personal level. Like if someone spilled their milk, I would help, clean it up type of thing, but never really served in a deep capacity. And so I decided I was going to take this phlebotomy class. And phlebotomy, for all the science nerds that are out there, is the study of blood. It's how we draw blood. So when you go to your doctor's office, they put the tourniquet on you and they draw blood. And so I was taking this class. And I was like the worst person in this class. Okay. Like I was the girl that nobody wanted to have draw blood on them. They're like, everybody would say, pick a part and draw today. And I would be the lone man standing. Okay. Whoever was left, they're like, not Suzanne. No.
Not Suzanne. That's funny.
Don't be late for that class. And one of the things we had to do was we had to do a rotation in a hospital. And I remember in the hospital, and this guy comes in and he's like football player, big guy, Ohio State. Okay. Ohio State. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Veins pulping in his arms. You can't miss these veins. And I remember being so excited. I'm going to draw this football player's blood. I'm like I said, I was a nerd. Okay. And I remember tying a tourniquet on his arm and I prepped my needle and I went to draw blood and there's no way you can miss these veins. And these veins are like an inch popping out of his skin. Okay. Especially with the tourniquet on. And I remember putting the needle through his arm and I was sitting there waiting and I'm like, no blood is coming out. And it occurred to me that I had pierced through his vein. I had got the vein, went through the vein, was trying to suction blood and nothing was coming out. He was looking at me. I was looking at him. The teacher was like, get out of here.
Wow.
And I remember being so embarrassed. And that afternoon, she tied a tourniquet to a chair and said, you're going to rely on a tourniquet. It's like, you're going to practice on this all day. So I went home humiliated with a realization that I kind of known all along, right? Because the classmates didn't want me to draw on them, that this was not the profession for me. And I remember bawling because it was my third year in college and you're supposed to graduate next year. You're obviously going to go to medical school and you're going to hate it for the rest of your life. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I remember having this epiphany that I'm going to be an accountant. I'm going to go to switch my college to College of Business and I'm going to become an accountant where I never have to draw blood again. And I remember telling my my instructors and they're like, oh, don't do that. You're almost done. My dad was like, Chinese man, you need to go to medical school. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I hurt people. I hurt people in this hospital and not intentionally. And I remember going to the College of Business and they're like, you're almost done. Your scholarship is almost done. You're going to have to pay for this. And I said, you know what? I will work 3 jobs if I have to. I will double up on my classes, but I will be an accountant. And I remember I had to be on the sidelines because you have to prove yourself to get into the Ohio State College of Business. But I was taking classes and I remember just having to prove myself so they would let me in. And especially so late in the game. And this is working 2 jobs at the time because my scholarship was going to run out. And I remember just acing it. Like, this is bad to say for any of the young viewers and listeners
Mm-hmm.
out there, but for me, it was like study less, party more, and get straight A's.
Right. Right.
And so, I ended up going to the top firm in the country back then, which was Arthur
Wow.
Anderson in the
Oh,
Chicago office, by the way,
wow.
Chicago, 33 West Monroe.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and working there, and then later on went to KPMG, and when
Excellent.
I had my daughter, I was like, I had this job that I would fly to every single week because I was responsible for the Toronto operations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember being about 6 months pregnant, third trimester, wasn't really allowed to be on the plane, but nobody asked me how pregnant I was. So I got on the plane anyway. And I remember like the airplane lady coming by, and she's like, ma'am, you're gonna have to put your armrest down. I'm like, I can't put my armrest down. My belly doesn't fit. But I kind of scooched over as much as
Yeah.
I could, put it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
And it hit me that my life was going to change. And if I continued to do this type of work, I would only see my daughter maybe one day a week on the weekend when I've got a chance to fly back to Houston. And after that, decided to start my own firm. Luckily, I had the background behind me that allowed me
Mm-hmm.
to accelerate that
Mm-hmm.
small business in a
Mm-hmm.
faster way. I was able to get government contracts because
Nice.
I had done some government work at KPMG with the city of Indianapolis and their health department. And then I had the private sector experience with Anderson, like your Komatsu's, your
Mm-hmm.
Mitsubishi's. And so I was able to accelerate to get those government contracts as well as build up a small business practice. So that's kind of how it all started.
Nice. Wow. I love it. I would say that that whole blood, that's a little traumatic. I'm just like, there's some trauma in that, There's some trauma, in that space but it turned into something that told you what you didn't want to do, right? So I would say that in that space. And so I think and again, we're just trying to show and make people understand that piece. So knowing how has your journey influenced the way you view risk, success, and failure in entrepreneurship? Because you help others, right? And that number set, like share with us your, kind of how you view the risk and how that may have impacted you, whether it was traumatic. Again, trauma can be positive or negative, right? However people want to look at it.
That's a really good question. And it was interesting. I think the big lesson that I learned, and I was lucky enough to learn that at a young age, is that it's okay to pivot. It's okay to change course when things don't work, when the numbers are not working and your gut feeling is telling you you're not meant to do this or
Yeah.
stay in this lane. Because I think a lot of times what happens in business and people's personal life is we sometimes stay in things too long. Maybe the whole world goes, you're brilliant at, you're good at this, and you're waking up every day and maybe you are brilliant, but it's a struggle for you. And it taught me that it's okay to pivot. It's okay to live outside of everybody else's expectation and to carve your own path.
Yeah. And I'm glad you say that. And I think what happens though, and I could be wrong, is that people, as entrepreneurs, we get in our head and we live in a world by ourselves to not hear what you just said. We allow that, oh my gosh, my business isn't making money. So I would love for you to share, for example, and I'm only doing this because I need for people to understand, right? You've got this great business, great brand, right? And I'm going to say it's a great brick and mortar, right? But the numbers, you're not making any money. And as someone who is worked in marketing, a lot of times, some of the organizations we work with, they'll bring us on to help them maybe, get some marketing to help them grow, right? So they'll pay us to say, hey, this business needs some help. And so we've got some money to just kind of help them. And these are investors or people that are invested in that. So I'm going to give you a scenario. You are a company, right? There's a company, you've got a great brand, probably has a decent product, maybe, right? But the numbers don't show that it's making a profit or that it's making revenue, but it looks good online. It's pretty. It's all the things that we see on all the channels, but it's not. So in that space, right? How do you help? Because to me, on the outside, that says there's some trauma that you're not dealing with for reality. Like you've got all the, the gloss and all the things that look pretty, but nothing is producing. So I would love to hear how do you deal with that, and have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to something you said very early on in the show. You said that our profit, our numbers are a reflection of really us, where we're at in life. You also said something about when we're excited about something, when we shine, it comes to us, right? Sales comes to us. People want to buy. Nobody wants to buy from somebody with a terrible attitude, right?
That's
That
true.
that is doing what they shouldn't be doing in life at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a couple of things that I would think about. And profit is a little tricky too, because I remember when I started my business, and I'm the author of a book called Profit First for
Mm-hmm.
Minority Business Enterprises. And for you guys that may not know about Profit First is really about creating intentional profitability. And and a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, we start out our businesses. We love what we do, right? Like I was a science geek, I was a math geek, and I'm a geek for numbers. Right? When
Mm-hmm.
we talk about tax code and stuff, I mean, like you can just see me light up when I get to sit down and just do tax strategy and go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is what it. Down. Like nothing lights me up more, okay, than that. But the problem is a lot of times when we start businesses, because we started and we do what we love, right? What happens is we would do it for free, right? Our and we get friends and family going, well, you do it for free. And what happened to me was I loved doing what I did so much. I actually ended up doing for free. And I think part of it was people pleasing. Part of it
Mm-hmm.
was like, I think especially for women, there's that need to, we're kind of taught our worth is how pretty we are, how we are able to get things done, how we're able to buffer the shoulder for somebody else that's struggling, right? And it's about, at the end of the day, helping somebody else get what they want before we prioritize what we need. And for me, it was about helping people to get their taxes done, helping them get their best tax amount, the least amount of tax, and not so much about afford my living expenses or be able to have anything to show for what I was working for. And as a result, my prices reflected that. It reflected somebody that, was more about people pleasing than really about their business, starting out with. And I think for people of color, one of the things that for me was, I had a very diverse clientele, and I love my clientele. And I think that some of us that come into the room, first time having college education, we're used to being in a room where nobody looks like us.
That's true.
And we have learned to dunk the ball, literally dunk the ball, meaning that we are the best of the best in what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we know we have to rise to that occasion to be even treated as average in the room. And so again, it was about, for me, working extra hard to outshine, right? To produce than it ever was about getting profitability.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, because my prices were so low, especially in those early years, I got a lot of clients. But I didn't have the margins to reinvest in the business. I didn't have the margins to hire people that was able to take the load off of me, because at the end of the day, nobody else was willing to work for free but me.
Right.
And so, really until I sat down and I figured out what is it that I really want this business to produce, that I might want to retire one day in my life, right? And
Yeah.
I might need to have a nest egg to be able to retire one day. Until I realized that and started to commit the processes to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
When I started to do that, that's when I was able to course correct and change the direction of my business and my life personally. I'm going to tell you guys this too. When I was 46 years old, I was able to sell my accounting firm and retire at the age of 46 because I started to align those processes with the things that I wanted to create those results.
At 46, this
At
Black
46.
woman sold her accounting practice. Wow. That's outstanding. That
Thank
needs,
you.
I mean, that's outstanding. Congratulations. And I say that my mother had a tax business. She's no longer here with us, but she had, and we were working to get her to be able to set it up to be sold because she had built, you know, she really never marketed. She was just a great person. She was in a neighborhood that people trusted. She did it in her home. She turned that. She got a real estate license. And so she was able to do their taxes, get their real estate. I mean, it was the whole thing that she had. And so she had a really nice group of clients. And I love how you have you turned that. And so when you turned that, is that where the Mariga Group came into space? Is that how that came to be?
Exactly. So what
Okay.
happened was, when I sold the firm, the question becomes, what do you do now, right? What do
Right.
you do now? Now that you don't really have to work, what do you do now? And because I had built up a reputation of turnaround businesses, what happened was I was able, people were saying, would you be our CFO? Would you be our fractional CFO? And then a lot of times it was these 7, 8 figure businesses that had grown to a point that they realized that outsourcing it didn't quite work for them anymore. And they just needed help with strategy, with
Mhm.
really being able to scale to that next level, being able to go public, being able to have someone that hires for their own in-house accounting firm or accounting team. And that's what I do now. And I just take a very select handful of clients and I help them turn around their businesses.
Wow. Did y'all hear that? I mean, that's like, I mean, so here's one of the things that I think that I need for people to understand. And I think this financial clarity doesn't get a lot more prevalence, right? A lot of times when I see businesses, right, it's, I work in branding marketing, right? So that's my jam, okay? But at the end of the day, right, I had to make a profit. And so as a business owner, when you said this, we were doing all these experiential campaigns and activations, and they were the bomb activations, I have to admit, with some of the best brands in the world, right? But when someone sat me down and was like talking numbers, it was really irritating. I'll be honest with you. I was like, I don't really want to talk about numbers. Like, I don't want. So now today, I'm a QuickBooks whiz. I know how to do that thing a whole lot faster than I did before. But one of the things that I had learned through that process was that once I got it on the paper, it got real. So when I say from that clarity, we under that experiential side of the business, because the time we still hold that name L3 Eventors on that side. This is gonna blow your mind, Susanne. Guess how much our profit was? 7%.
That's actually about average, right? That's the average. If you go onto an SEC company and you look at their financial statements, it's about 3 to 5%. That's the average profitability of a company, including an SEC company.
And that's when it was like, it got real for me. So I just took $1 and I was like, I'm only getting 3% of this dollar. Like, it wasn't. So it literally said to myself, we got to pivot, because this right here is not going to be sustainable. It's cool. We look good. It's great, but we're not. And so realizing that. And so what happened was I went into rooms where people were getting 30%, 35%. So I started listening because I love to learn, and was like, wait, well, how did you do this? And so how do you help businesses to really, knowing that some of us come with some trauma, and some of that trauma is passed down, projection. Our families may have put it on us, right? And we started this business, but we still living with this trauma, right? Like, you might be the only person that's making money, but then you don't know what to do with it because you weren't taught that, right? So how do you help these businesses gain that level of financial clarity to be able to, so that, whether it's recovery from, the business, or it's really to start a business from the scratch? Because I know you do turnaround, but even a business owner that's like starting from scratch, how do you help them to get that clarity first so that they don't make these mistakes?
And I think the first step is realizing that this is not working for you, right? Because, unfortunately, a lot of times it's coming to that realization. For me, was one day, it was a Saturday, and one of my friends had asked me to do their tax return for free. And this is busy season. And you, having a mother that was a tax accountant, you know how hard she worked, right, during tax
Yes,
season.
I do.
And it was like that final weekend of tax season, this extra return that I was doing it for free. And literally I got out of my seat when her return was done and my back snapped.
Wow.
And I remember sitting in bed. I was on painkillers, muscle relaxers. I was like, was it like 500 milligram ibuprofen?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I just can't believe I'm in this situation. And that's when I realized that my business had to change. And for a lot of business owners, it's looking at that bottom P&L and going, okay, I made 7% profitability. Like I can make more than that in a job. They say that the average business owner, $1 million business, the profitability on $1 million business on average is about $50,000 a year. And you and I both know you could make more than that in a W-2 job, right?
Sure can.
And to get $1 million business, that's a lot of work, right? That's
It
a lot of
is.
marketing, that's
It
learning,
is.
that's a lot of managing
Yep.
people, that's a
Yep.
lot of beginning to do processes. And it's not easy to cross into seven figures and to
It's
make,
not.
$50,000, right? 5% profitability is it's not worth it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so realizing that having that I call the come to Jesus moment,
Yep.
that I'm not going to be able to retire one day. I'm better off getting a job. That's the first step really with it. The next part is, they say fake it until you make it.
Oh, I hate that term now today. Oh, I hate
But
it. I'm
here's the
sorry.
thing.
It's very
You
traumatic
got
for
to
me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
No,
to trigger.
no, no,
I
no,
didn't
no,
mean
no,
to
no.
trigger.
Not in a. And let me say this. Let me say this. Not in a bad way, because what I've realized is it was hurting us by saying that we're faking. That's what I'm saying. It was hurting us. We think that, oh, it's this. Well, I've learned that faith it till you make it, right? So using faith instead of fake. And I had to replace it because that's where I learned, like you could just fake it, just show up, So I'm sorry, Suzanne, but finish.
But I like that. Faith it until you make it. We're going to call it that. So
Yes.
let's faith the actions till we make it. And I'm not, when I say faith it, right, I'm not talking about going out and buying a Bugatti, right? No, I'm not talking about going out and buying a Mercedes. I'm talking about creating actions in your business that generate profitability.
Yeah.
And what that looks like in the profit first method is we're going to create profitability on day one. No matter where you're starting at, whether you're starting at a 7% profitability, where you've been starting at a loss, we're going to literally create profitability on day one. And what that looks like in profit first is it looks like creating bank accounts, multiple bank accounts. And we are going to physically create profitability. We are going to use physics, here from the nerd, physics to create profitability. And so what happens in profit first is you have one bank account. And that bank account is called the income account. And all of your money that you collect, whether it's through credit cards, whether you're doing direct deposit through your clients, that's going to go into one bank account. And what you're going to do is you're going to transfer twice a month into various other smaller bank accounts based upon their pre-designated purposes. So this is where our faith it comes into play, right? And one of the first bank accounts we're going to transfer to is we're going to transfer to a profit bank account. And it's going to be a percentage that we decide up front what we're going to transfer. So whether that's 1%, whether that's 15%, 30%, we're going to transfer that 1% into a profit bank account. And what that means is we are creating profitability day one. Because if we put that money in there and we don't touch it, we're profitable day one, right?
That's true.
The next bank account that we are going to fund is our owner's pay account. And, a lot of times with business owners, their goal is to make six figures. And the problem is when it's to make six figures, 10 years from now, once they made six figures, they're still at six figures, right? They don't grow their salary. I was a victim of that, not growing my salary. I was happy programming it in your QuickBooks payroll so that it produced a fixed salary for me and never adjusting it. And what happens when that happens is you're not rewarding yourself for your hard work. And so what we're going to do in profit first is we're going to allocate a percentage to owner's pay. And we're allocating a percentage because as a business owner, you need to be rewarded based upon your performance.
Yeah.
So as your business grows, your revenue grows, so will your owner's pay. So you're being now compensated based upon the performance of your business. The next bank account that we're going to fund is going to be your tax account. I can't tell you as a CPA how many people I've met and they're like, how am I going to pay last year's taxes with this year's money? I mean, these people are like, should I drain my 401k? By the way, don't do that. There's penalties on that 10% penalty on top of the tax. And they're in panic. But the good news is because you're employing profit first, you're not going to worry about that because you are funding this tax account as you go. So yes, you're going to use smart tax strategy. Yes, you're going to be getting with your CPA every quarter and doing your estimated taxes and figuring out what you need to change and pivot. But you're going to be funding that tax account along the way so that you're not worried about, okay, I'm making profit now, I'm making owners pay. There's the other side, right? There's a tax side that you're going to have. And so you're going to be funding that account along the way. And then the last account that you're going to fund with these transfers is going to be your operating expense account. I like to call that the OPEX account. And this is the account where you're going to make decisions in, such as, how am I going to spend the money that's really set aside for discretionary spend? Am I going to upgrade into a brand new office space when I can work virtually? Am I going to hire that expensive assistant, right? And pay them more when I'm barely paying my salary, right? Well, what am I going to do with that operating expense? And so this is the account that you're going to budget in. And so what happens is you create an illusion of scarcity where, instead of all your money being available to spend in one bank account, like it probably is today, where everything goes in, goes out, right, on different things and different ideas, what's going to happen is it's something called Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law tells us as humans, we're efficient. The more you give us, the more we're going to use of it, right? You take me to Golden Corral, I am not going to leave Golden Corral proud of myself, right? I'm going to be doing a slow walk of shame as I leave Golden Corral, right? But if we go to dinner, right, and we have very small plates and then we only have what's set aside in that plate, we're going to eat really differently, right? We're going to leave proud of ourselves. We're going to have great conversation, right? And we're not going to be ashamed, right? And so that's what that system is going to do for you in terms of OPEX account. So you're going to create intentional profitability. You're going to compensate yourself for the work that you're doing, the success of your business, and you're going to spend wisely in that operating expense account.
You're listening to Black Businesses Matter, and we will continue our conversation in a second. But first, take a listen to this special message for our BBM fam.
We know how important it is to stay connected, so why not join our BBM Fam Club for special announcements and exclusive offers by texting BBM FAM to 312-300-1300. That's BBM FAM to 312-300-1300 today. Now let's get back to Black Businesses Matter.
I'm taking a breath because I'm like, whew, it's a lot. I just brought on an accountant, and I'm sharing this with you guys this year, and it's been good. But it's a lot of stuff I've had to undo, like paying quarterly taxes. Now we have it, but I got to now do it, right? So now I got to sit and I got to find the paperwork. So that's the other part that people understand is like, I'm going to tell you something that someone told me, and I think it's important to share. I was freelancing, probably like 3 years freelancing on my own. And people still work at cafes, but this is when, that was really the only place to really meet and network. And I was working in the corner, and I was just working, doing my thing outside of my house. And this guy was, he ended up being an attorney, was ear hustling. So he was hearing me talk and, on the phone and, on my laptop. And he says, tell me what it is you do. And I told him or whatever. And he said to me, based on what you're telling me, he said these exact words. He said, do you have any help? I said, no. He said, well, you're probably going to make about $50,000 a year. That's about all you're going to get. And I was like, what? And this was, in the early parts, maybe 3 years in, right? So this was 20 something years ago, right? So I was like, what do you mean? He says, because what is happening is you're the only one doing everything. So you're not, this isn't going to work. And at first I was kind of like, man, he picked up on that immediately for me, and he was an attorney, had a practice. But one of the things he also said, he says, but what I learned was, I also learned that don't be an owner where you can't enjoy it. He said, I didn't, much like what you said about, he was like, I missed a lot of my kids' very important moments because I was chasing after that. Right. And I could see you doing it. And I'm, young, doesn't have any kids or any. He was like, I can see you're running into that. And I just want to share that with you. And he was a Jewish man. And I appreciate him just really just pouring into me in a time where I didn't know that. And immediately, literally within 3 months, I hired a virtual assistant. And I was just like, this has got to stop. But I think that because we don't have that level of knowledge to know that, I think we operate in that survival mode and not know that we can thrive in business. We are surviving. Yes, I remember I got my first, it was a $50,000 contract, then $100,000. But if you ask me what was coming to me, it wasn't nowhere near that, right? And so that's when I realized, I was like, no, it's me. And so over time, and so I want to ask you this, kind of like, excuse me, because you've worked closely with these 7 and 8 figure, right? What patterns have you noticed about how your mindset or trauma influences those financial decisions and long-term growth? Because like for me, I didn't have the mind, because I didn't have the that mindset to know like, oh, you go hire somebody. I just heard, okay, just hustle. All I heard was the hustle. Work 12 hours. I don't work 12 hours per day, but I used to work 12, 20 hours. I don't think I slept in a lot of ways, right? So I didn't have sleep in my, I was like, who's sleeping? I was like, the term, you sleep when you die. And I lived that. And I realized that. So I want to know, what patterns have you noticed that about like trauma in the mindset that influences our financial kind of decisions and long-term growth?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot. I talked earlier about pivoting when things aren't working, right? And pivoting can mean like if you're doing like in marketing, for example, if a campaign is not working, you switch it, right? You approach marketing as a test versus
That's right.
okay, taking it personally. It didn't
Yep.
work out. We
Yep.
tested it. It didn't work. We're going to change our copy.
Yep.
We're going to change our wording,
Yep.
our pictures. We're going to change something and keep testing until we find something that works.
Yep.
And that's kind of how we have to look at life, right? We keep testing and we have to course correct before we lose it all, right? And that's exactly what happens in business. I think with a lot of 7 to 8 figure businesses, and even with 6-figure business, this is what stops them from really going to that next level or plateauing, is being afraid to pivot, being afraid to change. For example, if you hire somebody, sometimes that person isn't working out. And there's that guilt of, oh my goodness, like I'm going to let them down. They left their job that they loved, and now they're in a job that they're doing terrible on. They're making me miserable, but I don't want this person to be unemployed. And so there's that trauma guilt. I remember like being in college, and my dad was complaining about one of his bookkeepers, and I told him, just fire her. Every time I talk to you, you talk about how terrible this woman is. Fire her. And I remember he told me, he goes, Susanne, it's not that easy. He goes, you fire somebody and it affects your whole morale of your business. Everybody doesn't trust you. They think that they're next. And suddenly you start losing good people. And I carried that into my business. I carried in like, okay, week 2, this person's not going to work out. Week 2, like when they're telling you they can't find the off button of the computer to turn it on, but you're like, okay, well, I can just teach this person how to do this. Right. And there's trauma that happens, suddenly they go, it's your fault for not teaching them right. Right. When they just don't, they're in the wrong bus, right there. It's not their talent to learn this. And so you carry that guilt and you end up keeping people too long on the bus that shouldn't be there. And what that person does is they don't perform optimally. It takes 3 people to do one person's job if you had the right person on the bus. And now your profitability is down because it's a lot more expensive to support 3 people than it is to support one really great person that is maybe paid above average.
Yep.
So that's definitely one thing that I see with 7, 8-figure businesses. Also why 6-figure businesses don't make it is they have more people on the bus than they need because they have people that are not really in their zone of genius working with them.
I swear by that zone of genius. And I think that's so it's funny. One of the things I had to change in my business, Susanne, was how I recruit. Because what I realize is sometimes I recruit based on like, oh, she's this, all the things, just based on the optics, right? Now I ask, tell me what makes you happy? Like what brands would you love to work on? That lets me know if there's a good fit here. Because if we are selling, hypothetically, wheatgrass, and nothing against what I'm about to say, fried chicken, because it's not this, but you love that, right? And it's okay. This probably may not work. I'm not saying it can't work, but it may not work because their passion is from the spans of, we want people that, love wheatgrass, right? You like chicken. They don't go together. They just don't go together. So unless you tell me you're going to make a wheatgrass chicken, then that's a whole different story, which you can with AI, right? You can. Nowadays, you can do anything you want to do. But I think that's the thing that I had to learn, because a lot of times, right, tell me all the interview questions. And I had to learn, like, tell me, what do you love to do? Like, what does your weekend consist of? Tell me what family means to you. Like, I had to change that, because what I realized is that was the only way I'm going to get people who were humans and see me as a human. That was it. Like, I don't want to be the boss. I want to be a human, right? So that you understand that I don't know. And I think but again, I think I didn't know that, right? And I think that's to your point. And then guilt. And I remember I had to let someone go. And literally, and I know you know this because this is what you do and through Profit First and as a fractional CFO. When I let her go, and she kind of let herself go, actually, in theory, the business boomed. I mean, it was bleeding. And I was like, man, then that happened. I mean, it's just like the right people showed up. We went from, we not only doubled, we tripled in that, right, in revenues, because it was me, because I was trying to, save them. Like, oh, I can really make this work, and I can really help. Oh, and I don't think we understand that we probably are. And this is what I said. I am not the best in the space of like hiring and firing. And I should be okay with saying that. I'm not.
And I love that you share that.
Yeah, I'm not good at it. And so the way that I had to do is really get the right people that are, and it allows. So what I had to do was trauma, was that I had to learn how to disconnect people from them personally, because my ability to fire was based on, their mom, there's such and such died, or, all the things, what I mean? It was all the things. And what I learned to do is, I can't get close to them. We can still be humans together, but I can't get that, because that's my weakness, not theirs, mine. And that's the part it was very uncomfortable for me, very. But I recognized that was an issue for me. And I was doing my business a disservice by showing up authentically, sure, but I'm the person that, how are you? How's your family? I'm that girl. And not that I don't do that, but I don't have to have you in my day to day. So, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. You know what I mean? You see me, I write the checks, yep. But you don't know my life. You don't know what's happening in my world, right? And that was something that I had to, and I think that was a big thing. I love to hear your perspective around, I am a person who operates in the spirit of abundance. I don't think there is a such thing as lack. I think as long as you're curious, that's my mindset. Everything you need is already there. It's just that you have to tap into it. That's me. But I would love to hear your perspective on abundance, because we think abundance is all the things, the gloss, the whatever, like you said, the cars, the whatever. And that's okay too. So I mean, that's still great. But I would love to hear you as a business owner, as a person who's an author of Profit First, who has a proven process. I want to hear what that mindset of abundance is.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, even going back to science, right? And we talk about matter, right? And we talk about energy. There's not a finite amount of matter out there. There's not a finite amount of energy, right? If I push something, now I'm giving it momentum, right? I'm giving it kinetic energy to move forward, right? So there's not a finite amount of matter. There's not a finite amount of energy. There's not a finite amount of money out there either, right? And so, I think that knowing that, opening yourself up to that, there's no limit on what we can do. There's no limit on how much we can make, right? Or what we're worthy of. It's accepting that there's the world of the universe is limitless.
Mm, mm. So that makes me feel good. I don't think I'm just, because I know I'm in the family, the whimsical. They're like, oh, you don't believe, you think, and I just do. I just believe what is for me is for me. Like I just don't operate like if we lose a client, there's about 10 more that we gotta go catch, But it took a lot of bad turns to get there, right? This didn't happen overnight. And I think that's where we have to understand. And you said something that earlier about, I think it was your dad's business, like he had all the clients, like he didn't work at, like he was just a good person. I think that's what you were saying. And he got all this. And I don't think that we use that part as as a core value in how to retain client and keep and go after clients. Do you still believe, like the clients you get, how do you get them?
So it's interesting. I think at this point, being like it's a very niche type of business. At this point, most of it's word of mouth and recommendations. And but it takes years to get to that point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I had the accounting firm, we had to do different things. We had to market, we had to do advertising, we had to do speeches, we had to ask for, it was a combination of different things that made it work. So I think for every business, there's a different phase with that, but there's definitely not a finite amount of clients out there. It's what you're willing to accept and really what you want, what your personal goals are really with it.
I love that you turned that into what you want versus going after, because the word is customers, you got to get the customers. No, it's what do you want? And I love that you turn, you turned the mirror back. And I think that's where, we think about trauma, you got to turn the mirror back. What do you want? And so having all the clients is great, but what do you want? And I think you've done that. What advice would you give entrepreneurs right now navigating trauma in their business while they're trying to build something meaningful that could change the world?
One of the best things that I ever did, after I sold my business in 2022, I went through a phase of what do I do now, right? What happens to me now that I've sold this business? Because when you've run a business for almost 20 years, that business becomes your identity. It's who you are. And I remember I would go to this place in the mountains in Tucson, Arizona. It was Canyon Ranch. And it's an expensive place, it's like $1,000 a day. And the beauty of it is you can just sit and do nothing. They prepare your foods, and I literally just sat, ate, and prayed the entire week that I was out there. And I went out there probably 3 times that year, just sitting, eating, and praying, and with no agenda, just sit, eat, and pray, and maybe meet some people, maybe not. That wasn't a priority. But what it did for me is it gave me time out to reset, to think about what was really important to me in my next step. And for me, my next step was about really having impact was my next step. And figuring out next step, how am I going to create that impact? And hence I'm on your podcast. And so I would say it's really important to figure out what's important to you. And it's important to take that time to force yourself to sit out on the sideline to discover that.
You have blessed me in more ways than, and this is why I do what I do, because when I'm challenged with things on how to do, I meet guests and it gives me an optics to say, I now know someone that's doing it, has done it. And it helps because one of the things that, as a business owner, right, starting as freelance, that's my dream, is to get to a place where we can sell our business, right? But I didn't have enough people, right, that I knew within my sphere, circle of influence to say I can do it. I met a guy, young guy, and he told me he did his, and again, he doesn't look like me, right? But to have you to share this with me, it gives me hope, and to know that I have you in front of me, like that helps to push me through it. Because I believe what you believe, what you see, and what you surround yourself it will be, right? But that also has to mean that you have to change your circle too, right? You can't stay in the same circle. So thank you for that. Thank you for just that. Because now I'm just sitting, I'm like, man, I now know somebody. Like, I know her, like Susanne, like she did this. And so I can do this. And I'm 52 and I can do this. Like at 55, I can do this, right? And I think that's where the trauma, we have to decide, and you told us, turn the mirror to you instead of turning the mirror to the people. I think that's it. So we have our brag moment. And the brag moment, we call it our BBM brag moment, which is, of course, Black Businesses Matter, but it's also our brag moment. Brag about what you got going on, the book, and all the things that you want to share with the audience.
So I definitely want to eradicate entrepreneur poverty. That's my heart within my heart, right? Especially in our communities, right? And we do that by having profitable businesses, right? Because the reality is when we are profitable, it gives us the opportunity to reach back and help someone else, whether that's employing that person to give them a great job, great experience. Today, one of the things that lights my heart up is when an employee that I used to work with calls me and she goes, Suzanne, it was brutal working with you, but you changed my life. Like I'm getting promotions at this job that I'm at now. People are telling me I'm like the best accountant they've ever had. It's because of your training. And, it lights your heart up when you find out that you've made that. And you can only do that by having a successful business. So I encourage you guys. It's like on sale. You can go to Amazon, anywhere books are on sold. I know Amazon's having a sale now on the book. And get your copy of Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises. And what I like about this book is it's a legacy piece for me. What I mean by that is I partner with a charity called Hope Worldwide. And when a book is sold, $1 from every book goes towards Hope Worldwide, where we send girls to school in Zimbabwe. And our book was published in 2021. And every year we have built up a classroom of young Zimbabwean girls that are getting a chance to go to school and get an education. And, I always go like, I'm not doing this on Oprah Winfrey scale, but I'm changing 21 girls' lives every single year. And it just lights me up. So, help yourself with your business, grow your profits, grow your communities, grow your country, but also we're going to be helping girls in school. Get Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises.
Get it, guys. Get it. I tell people, right, the best gift that I think that anyone could give is a book that can change your life. It's the best gift because it's the gift that keeps on giving. It is the best. I mean, I'm a bookworm. I love it. I love when you said nerd. I just love reading books, right? And I think it makes me happy. And so as we close this, Susanne, because I just, I need for people, before I wrap up, I forgot, it was one note. Let people know what a fractional CFO is. Because a lot of times I want people to understand they mix sometimes accountants and so I want you to clearly define that if you can for us.
Absolutely. So there's an accountant for every stage of your business. And even if you're just starting off your business, you need an accountant, right? Somebody to make sure they're filing your tax returns. So when you do cross 7, 8, 9 figures, you're not figuring out, okay, how am I going to get out of this tax trouble that I've caused myself? So every stage of your business, you need one, whether that's bookkeeping, accounting, there's definitely a need for it. In terms of fractional CFO, that's more so once you cross 7 figures, I think that becomes more the need because at that point, you're really refining your business, right? In order to continue to scale and grow profitably. So you're looking at things like your gross margins, which is that difference between your revenue less your direct costs, figuring out what that Pareto principle is. We call that the 80-20 rule. looking at how we can cut costs without sacrificing quality, and really taking a look at steering the ship in a way that produces profitability in the least costly way that still has the same quality that you'll be proud to deliver.
Nice. And I think that, so I want you guys to say this. Keep your accountant. She didn't say let go of your accountant, because I think we mix those two a lot. And it's interesting. And I say that because people are like, well, I got an accountant. Okay. Keep the accountant, because the accountant you need. But I do think that people, right? Don't you hear that? People like, well, do I keep you or do I keep, and helping people understand, no. Keep your accountant, and your CFO is another function of your business that you want to have. And I think people do, because I was guilty. I don't know, maybe nobody knows that, but I was guilty. I was like, wait a minute, I thought the CFO could do this. No. And I had one. I remember a colleague of mine was like, yeah, Larvette, I do this, but I don't file no taxes. I don't know nothing about taxes. And that's okay, but I can help you make money. I was like, oh, okay. That's what I got. So I was like, yes. So I have to ask you this. Why do Black businesses matter?
I mentioned earlier, I started my career in Chicago, in Anderson. And I remember when I first moved to Chicago, right before I moved, I asked one of my colleagues, I said, where should I live? Where should I live in this beautiful place of Chicago, 1999? Where should I live? Just to kind of date myself on this.
Yeah.
And I remember my colleague, he was a young guy, white guy, because back then that's who held those
Yeah.
positions, right?
Yeah.
And he said, live in Lincoln Park, live in Lakeview, but
Yeah.
live in Wrigleyville. But whatever you do, don't live in the south side of Chicago. That's what he told me.
Wow.
And he probably meant the best, for
Yep.
me to be safe.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, why shouldn't I live on the south side of Chicago? And I remember, like, when I moved to Chicago, I got this apartment, and it was like right at the corner of Diversity and Sheridan. You're a Chicago girl, so you know what I'm talking about. And I remember it was so beautiful. You looked out the window, you
Yes,
couldn't tell where the
beautiful.
sky began
Yep.
and the lake ended. It was just blue. And I remember, like, it was a neighborhood where everybody looked like Barbie and Ken, and they drove a Jetta. It was that kind of neighborhood, right? And I felt like a store fun. I remember getting on the bus, nobody would sit next to me, and I was like, okay, I guess the purse has a chair, unless the bus was totally full. And that was life there. And I remember one Saturday I was bored. And I said, I'm just going to take this bus, and I'm going to take, when the bus lets me out, because it don't go any further, I'm going to take another bus, and I'm just going to see where the good Lord takes me. And so I took this bus, and it went, all throughout Chicago, and it went to like Michigan Avenue, which was so beautiful. And I remember, like, right around Roosevelt and Michigan Avenue, the bus driver was like, ma'am, you need to get out. I'm about to turn around, and unless you want to pay another fare, you need to get out. And I took my little purse, and I got out of the bus, and I caught this other bus that was coming, that was continuing down Michigan Avenue. And I got on this bus, and I noticed that things started to change, right? I know Chicago's a little bit different now,
Yeah.
but instead of like
Still
all the
much like
glitz and
that, but yeah.
glamour of Michigan Avenue, what you started to see was people pushing shopping carts. You saw less grocery stores. You saw more boarded up windows. And then it hit me. I said, what's the difference between south side of Chicago and north side of Chicago? And the difference was thriving businesses, profitable, thriving businesses. That was the difference. Nobody had a profitable, thriving business. And I'm talking like small businesses. The north side of Chicago was a lot of small businesses that are profitable, that are thriving, that are being supported by their communities. And so your profit matters. Our profit absolutely matters. Our Black businesses matter because we create jobs in our community, which creates infrastructure in our community, which generates money in our community, which gives us safe communities. And so our businesses matter.
Oh, I love that story. I love that you gave that story, because that is a real story for Chicago. And that is still what we go through today. Still. We still have boarded up on the south side of Chicago. We still only have one business that we feel or deemed, good and safe. And so it's real. So you saying that gives me chills, because it represents that we're still there. In some ways we've grown, right? So instead of it being 0, we got 1. So that's better than nothing. And so that really is the truth, and our profit matters. Yeah. And I will say this, she has a podcast, and I'm looking forward to being on this podcast with her so we can talk, because I love the Profit Talk podcast. I love that. I love the name. So I'm excited about that. We'll talk through that, guys. So I'm excited to be on her podcast. So I want to share with you all, she also has a podcast that you may, and are you on all platforms? Suzanne, are you on all platforms?
I'm on all platforms.
All platforms, the Profit. So Google the Profit Talk podcast. I tell you, just Google it and you'll find whatever platform you want to be in. So what brings you joy?
What brings me joy? Lots of things bring me joy, right? Seeing my kids grow up brings me joy. Seeing businesses be successful brings me joy. So those are the things that bring me joy. Lots of things. Seeing happy people brings me joy.
That's excellent. I agree. Happy people does. Guys, this has been incredible. Susanne Mariga. Okay, I want to say Mariga. And her book is The Profit First. It's on all platforms. It's on Amazon. So please be sure to do that. She also has a podcast, the Profit Talk podcast. So please take a listen to this. I mean, she's a powerful woman, y'all. She's sold a business and turned it into something that is very niche and that is so powerful. And we're excited. And so, guys, as we wrap up this season of trauma, take this episode as one that says, what I got out of it, guys, is turn that mirror back on you, instead of making it everyone else's. And we've all experienced it, and look at those things and ask yourself, like, what are my goals? Where do I want to go? Am I holding on to this business because I didn't have the mindset to pivot, right? That's what I got. And so sometimes we're holding on we're holding on because and again, Jesus is going to save us, but we also have to understand that Jesus needs to save us when we release some of that, right? We have to release some of that to him to save us, right? And releasing says maybe it's not that way. So that's what I got out of, this episode. And I want you all to take this opportunity to understand that all trauma is not bad. So let's stop creating that narrative that all trauma is bad. At least I got that through this season. Trauma can turn into something that can be transformative. It can create resilience, and it can create profit. And I believe that that's what Susanne has been able to do with what she's been able to do with 7- and 8-figure business owners. I'm sure of that. So we talked about some patterns. I always want to mind, because I really believe that we don't delve in enough and about finances. And so I want to ask this, Susanne, as I close, how can people connect with you?
So the best way to connect with me, I talked about Profit First earlier, and there's a free map that I give out on one of my websites. And people always ask me, like, what percentage should I be putting to profit or to my owner's pay or tax account? And you can actually download that table, and it'll tell you based upon where your business is today. If you go to profitmap.co, profitmap.co, not com.co, you can download that to figure out where you should be in your business in terms of your percentages.
That's a good resource, guys. So you can do that. Oh, yep. I went to it just a second ago because I said I want to do it. And so, yes, Profit First Target Allocation Percentage Cost Tabs. So take a look at it. This is awesome. And you can literally download this. So while you are sitting at home or whatever you do, because sometimes we just sit at home, listen to things, download this, spend some time with yourself, pray about it, ask the Lord who you should work with. But I tell you this, when you see this wonderful, beautiful woman, you may want to talk to her and see if she can help you. Okay, guys? So here you have it. Thank you so much, Susanne. This has been such a joy to have you here on the show. I'm so glad that you were part of this series. You certainly blessed me. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be on your show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And guys, to my listeners, to my viewers, I just want to say thank you all. This whole entire season has been transformative from a trauma standpoint. Some of them I had to be real vulnerable and have some moments. So know that I too was learning a lot as well and understanding the trauma that I'm faced with as a business owner, but even putting myself out here and say, someday I want to sell my business. So it's recorded so that I can go back and say, I said it. And I had Susanne as someone in front of me. So thank you guys. Appreciate you all for this season. This season is actually doing very well. People are sharing, which is interesting. I was uncertain about this season. I thought it was going to be what it was, but you are sharing this episode. I heard something I want to share before we close. I was in a podcast webinar, and one of the things that they said, and I think it's so powerful, don't focus, and this is good, don't focus on the downloads or uploads, focus on your episodes. And I got to focus in on my episodes. For every person I meet, I get to hear their story, and I get to figure out how I can apply it, how I can share it, how I can connect it. I'm not focused on, will they share it? Will somebody download it? Will it with this? Do we look at numbers? Sure we do, but we don't come to the table to expect that. And I think that was one of the best advice I could have ever received, to let you know that if you are wanting to build a podcast, stay out of that space and focus on the episodes, right? Susanne, would you agree?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
right? It's one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
If we quit things after the first few months of the year, we'll never get to where we go. Our growth compounds. Like we talked about, this is my second business. Second business grows a lot faster than the first one. And so give yourself that grace to grow.
Yeah. That was good for me that I got out of there. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to share that. So thank you guys for rocking with us and sharing with us. Sharing and share this with others. Purchase that book. Remember that we have the power to be able to change narratives. Thank you guys for another episode of Black Businesses Matter. See you next week.
The Black Businesses Matter podcast is produced by the L3 Agency, a culturally sensitive influencer marketing and communications firm in Chicago, where relationships are our currency, passion is our profit maker, and people are our bottom line. Follow us on Instagram at Black Businesses Matter.